The bone-chilling truth about why Victorian men sold their wives at midnight in the shadowy corners of Victorian society, a dark secret brewed, one that would send shivers down any spine. Picture this: moonlight glistening on cobbled streets, draped in an eerie fog, as men in top hats and tails whispered in hushed tones under the gaslight glow. They were not just talking business or politics, they were making chilling decisions. Midnight was not just the hour of darkness, it was the time when wives vanished from their homes, sold like common goods, leaving only heartache in their wake. The strange reality was this: women were commodities, bound by marriage, yet shackled by societal expectations. A wealthy husband, bored and yearning for adventure, could sell his wife to the highest bidder without a second thought. Can you imagine? A woman stepping through her front door, only to find her future left to the whims of those with silver coins. As the clock struck 12, the moral compass of a nation tilted dangerously. And what about the auctions? The chilling sight of a woman, cheeks flushed with disbelief, standing on a wooden platform as onlookers stared with cold, calculating eyes. What kind of monster could stand by and watch? The gasps of the crowd mingling with the clink of coins, sending icy tendrils of shock through all present. Each whisper echoed the words, "Sale! Sale!" ringing in hearts and minds like a distant bell tolling doom. The desperation wrapped around her like a suffocating cloak. But who would dare to raise their hand? The truth ran deeper, though. Unspoken rules governed the dark dance of midnight purchases. The wives had no voices in the matter. If they dared to fight back, well, rumors spoke of cruel retribution, an unthinkable fate worse than a loveless marriage. The ghostly whispers of desperate pleas filled the nights, leaving a trail of intrigue and horror. What drove these men to such extremes? Was it greed, or something more sinister lurking in the shadows? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the moon climbed higher, one particular auction loomed over the horizon. A dark-haired beauty caught the eye of a bidder infamous for his cruelty. Gasps erupted, and uncertainty gripped the crowd. Would she be sold to this monster? Would she become just another story lost to the night? Her heart raced, and as she scanned the room for allies, the weight of desperation hung thick in the air. And yet, in the middle of this chaos, a flicker of defiance sparked within her. Could she escape? Would midnight be her doom, or her chance for freedom? What lay beyond the cobbled street was unknown mysteries swirling like the fog around her. All eyes were on her. The clock was ticking. She could feel the crowd's eyes boring into her, heavy like the oppressive fog that swallowed the streets outside. Desperation coiled tightly around her chest, restricting her breath. Would she become a mere object for someone else's whim, a lifeless prize for a beast in a fancy coat? Her heart pounded, echoing in her ears, drowning out the way the auctioneer's voice slithered through the room like a snake, promising riches and power to the highest bidder. Coming up next, we have a true gem, he announced, gesturing dramatically toward her. The flickering gaslight caught the glint of metal coins, each one a potential harbinger of doom. A chill crept along her spine. She could almost hear the clatter of coins as they changed hands. As lives changed entirely, she summoned every ounce of courage, drawing in a breath deep from her core. But the room was filled with men whose hearts had long been consumed by greed, each one of them eyeing her as if she were a piece of fine artwork to be owned. The whispers surged like a tide, the word "sale" rising above the din, a chant that made her skin crawl. Panic flickered in her gaze as she caught the eye of the cruelest man present. He leaned back, a diabolical grin on his lips, and she felt a shudder race through her. What would he do to her? The stories of his wrath echoed in her memory. Other women had come to ruin at his hands, becoming just shadows of their former selves. A lump formed in her throat, and her vision blurred. But the fire inside her was awakening, burning against the despair threatening to swallow her whole. She scanned the crowd for a glimmer of hope, a potential ally amongst the sea of their greed. But all she saw were the faces of men who had forgotten the warmth of honor and compassion. Perhaps she was destined to be just another tale of tragedy, yet the thought of becoming an object of their contempt filled her with renewed resolve. With eyes narrowed against the spotlight's interrogation, she took a small step forward, daring to speak. "I am not a prize to be won. You cannot own me." Her voice trembled, yet it cut through the air like a blade. Gasps filled the room, surprise and outrage colliding in a chaotic harmony. The auctioneer's face twisted in disbelief, and even her tormentor shifted slightly, his smirk faltering as flashes of confusion crossed his features. Maybe just one little act of revolution could ignite a fire within others, she thought. But would the darkness swallow her whole before any flicker of rebellion ignited? As the tension soared, one man stepped past the throng, his eyes locking onto her. He was not one of the wealthy, cruel bidders. He was another soul ensnared by this brutal tradition. "Please," he beckoned, desperation dripping from his voice like rain. "I can help you escape if you trust me." Her heart raced at the possibility. Could he truly be her chance for freedom, or was he yet another wolf masked as a friend? Would her act of defiance lead her to liberation, or was it a trap that would seal her fate? Time dragged, every passing second stretching her dread and hope to breaking point. The crowd buzzed with murmurs, the air thick with uncertainty. She had to make a choice. An instinct told her that this moment would dictate her destiny. Behind her, the clock continued its relentless ticking, and darkness loomed just beyond the cobbled stones. Meanwhile, the eyes of her tormentor darkened with malice, and she knew there would be no more chances left to choose. What lay ahead was as shrouded in mystery as the fog that cloaked the night. Would she take her leap of faith, or choose the safety of despair? Her instincts screamed at her as she weighed the man's offer, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. The crowd continued to murmur, a cacophony of confusion and intrigue, and all eyes shifted to her, awaiting her response. Every moment felt like 1,000 weights pressing down upon her shoulders. Would this be the moment she would forever regret, or would it lead to her salvation? She took a shaky step toward him, her fingers trembling. She hesitated, searching his eyes for a sign of deceit. "You can help me?" The crowd continued to murmur, whispers swirling around them like a hurricane, and she braced herself for the storm. With a quick glance, the man scanned the room, his brow furrowed. "There's a way out. Follow me," he urged, his voice low and urgent. She believed the fear in his eyes was genuine, that he too was entangled in the web of this malevolent auction. Doubt clawed at her. Should she trust him? He could just as easily be leading her to another cage. But the icy grip of her tormentor's gaze wrapped tightly around her throat, and she knew she had to act. "I'm coming," she said firmly, her voice steadier now. Before she could second-guess her decision, she dashed toward the small opening between the roiling chaos of the crowd, her breath coming faster and quicker with each stride. The man moved to block the auctioneer's view, creating a thin pocket of refuge. But the only exit lay behind them in the direction they dared not face. "Now," he pulled her forward, urgency radiating from him as the unexpected rush of hope tethered her heart. The moment she felt the coldness of the wooden door at the back of the room, a scream erupted from the crowd. "Stop her!" someone shouted. The air suddenly thickened with panic as men surged forward, their intentions clear. Instinctively, she grabbed the man's hand, her grip tightening around his as they pushed through the doorway. The dim light of the narrow hallway illuminated their escape route. A gasp escaped her lips as they stumbled forward, just barely avoiding grasping hands reaching from the crowd. "Where to?" she asked, fear drumming in her chest. He looked back, desperation flaring in his gaze. "The alley. We need to reach the alley before they realize we're gone." As they fled through the shadows, the din behind them grew louder. Men's shouts reverberated down the corridor, a haunting reminder of what they were leaving behind. The flicker of hope she had felt moments ago began to wash over her with a cold reality. Freedom was still perilously near, but far from certain. They burst into the alley, the night wild and electric with the scent of rain-drenched cobblestones. But they didn't stop. The man pulled her further into the darkness, away from the growing chaos and toward the unknown. But as they reached a corner, The ground beneath their feet shifted, a trapdoor haphazardly positioned amidst the refuse of the street. It opened with a creak, revealing a dark abyss. "Down," he urged, pushing her forward into the void. She hesitated, the chilling fear of the unknown clawing at her heart. Wait, but it was too late. He had already jumped, his shadow swallowed by the darkness below, leaving her standing at the edge, caught between trust and fear. The voices of their pursuers echoed closer, a damning chorus urging her to leap. Instinct told her to run, yet something deeper beckoned her to follow him into the dark. Could she take that leap into uncertainty, or would waiting spell her doom? As she teetered on the edge, breath caught in her throat, would she follow him into the darkness? Or would the light of her former life bind her to this cursed world? The moment had come. What awaited them below was a deeper mystery, and the answer might just alter the very fabric of her being. The sound of footsteps echoed down the alley, sharp and relentless. They were close. Adrenaline surged through her veins, challenging her instincts and urging her feet to move. It all hung on that single moment. With a deep breath, she let herself fall into the darkness, surrendering to the dive into the unknown. The cold air enveloped her like a shroud, the sound of her breathing frantic as she landed on a rough surface. "Oof," she gasped, hitting the ground hard. "Get up." His voice cut through the dark, harsh but urgent. The man was crouched beside her, eyes wide with fear. "They won't stop until they find us. Come on." With trembling legs, she pushed herself up, scanning their surroundings. The darkness was thick and suffocating. She felt her heart race, a cacophony against the silence. "Where are we?" she managed to whisper, her words hanging heavily in the air. "An old cellar," he replied, glancing around as he led the way through the dimness. "It's not much, but it's safe, for now." The hallway narrowed, the weight of the earth above them pressing down. Shadows flicked across the walls as they moved deeper, an unsettling whisper echoing of secrets buried beneath the cobbled streets. She could barely make out the outlines of crates and old furniture, remnants of a life that felt worlds apart from her own. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, the question spilling out before she could grasp its implications. He paused, turning to meet her gaze, a flicker of sincerity crossing his face. "Because I can't live with myself knowing I let you be taken," he said, his voice low and earnest. "But who are you?" The words felt like daggers in her throat that he hesitated, eyes darting back toward the entrance. "Someone who knows just how dangerous it is to be trapped like this." His tone hardened, slashing through the frail bond of trust they were forging. "And someone who needs your help." The urgency in his voice stirred something within her, a faint echo of hope. Helpful for what? To get out of the city alive. Before she could respond, creaking footsteps filtered through the darkness. Her breath hitched, and they both froze, hearts pounding in synchronicity. The trapdoor creaked above them, and she could almost feel the eyes of their pursuers searching, seeking. "No time." He grabbed her wrist, pulling her further into the shadows just as a shaft of light streamed down from the entrance. The heavy footsteps drew nearer, muttering voices gauging their proximity. "We need to go deeper." As they navigated the maze of forgotten items, a flickering light caught her eye at the end of the corridor. It pulsed like a heartbeat, inviting yet terrifying. "What is down there?" she asked, eyeing the glint cautiously. "Only one way to find out," he said, urging her forward. An instinctual wave of dread washed over her. "What if it's a trap?" The words dripped with skepticism. "Then we'll figure it out together," he shot back, any trace of uncertainty replaced by fierce determination. Unsure but desperate, she followed him toward the glow. As they neared, the light transformed from a flicker to a steady beam, illuminating what looked like a hidden chamber, old and forgotten, echoing tales of 100 unsung lives. But then the lights above flickered violently. The door slammed shut with a thunderous bang, the sound engulfing them in a darkness that felt all-consuming. Her pulse raced as she clutched his arm. "What is happening?" "Stay close. We have to find another way out before they trap us in here," he replied, his face stern. Just then, the floor beneath them trembled, and a low growl reverberated from deep within the shadows. Panic surged as they both turned, realizing they were not alone. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. A familiar face, twisted with sinister intent and bathed in an eerie glow. The fear lodged in her throat. "No, it can't be you." And just like that, dread wrapped around her once more, tighter than before. The flicker of hope began to dim, replaced by the dawning memory of betrayal. "Run!" the man shouted, but the shadows were already closing in, and she wasn't sure whether it was toward him or the darkness that would finally consume her. What awaited them, buried within those twisting shadows? Would they uncover the truth, or would it be their ultimate unraveling? The figure stepped closer, drawing the faint light closer to its face. It was an all-too-familiar face, marked with betrayal and desperation. "Surprised to see me?" Her voice was a twisted whisper, climbing out of the abyss with a smirk that chilled the air. "No, it can't be," she stammered, the reality of the woman before her shattering her world. "Did you really think you could escape me?" The woman's eyes glinted with a malevolent pleasure, a dark thrill in the confrontation. Behind her, shadows surged, writhing like restless spirits. The panic in her chest tightened, squeezing all rational thought from her mind. "Why?" The single word came out, raw and ragged, desperate for answers. "I was your friend. You took everything," the familiar face spat back. "And now, it's your turn to pay." "No," the man beside her shouted, bringing her back to the grim reality around them. "We have to go? This place is a trap. Move." But the echoes of betrayal rang louder, drowning out instruction. The shadows seemed to dance eagerly around her feet, tethering her to the past she thought she had escaped. She felt the man's grip on her arm tighten, pulling her away as the darkness beckoned. "Don't listen to her," he urged, dragging her backward, but the familiarity of the woman's voice paralyzed her. "She's lying. We need to get out of here." The low growl that had punctuated their desperate escape intensified, morphing into something guttural, with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Panic flooded her senses again, and she pulled against the man's hold. "What do we do?" she demanded, looking between them. The shadows thickened, closing in on all sides, suffocating what little light had remained. "Trust me," he cried, his eyes fierce as they flared with urgency. "We need to move, now?" With a swift motion, she grabbed his hand, following his lead as they bolted deeper into the chamber. The known betrayal echoed behind them, muffled by the growing noise of something monstrous, rampaging through the shadows. "Over there," he shouted, pointing toward a narrow corridor to the left that peaked with a dim green light. The air was thick with the scent of dampness and decay as they rushed toward it. They stumbled forward, and the shadows shrieked in outrage, twisting angrily as if to keep them trapped. "Don't look back," he warned, his grip firm around her wrist as they flew past bizarre artifacts, old grates, forgotten statues, and unrecognizable shapes lunging for them in the dim light. Her feet pounded the cold ground, heart racing. They pressed on until the corridor ended at a rusted door that stood ajar, as if it were a gateway to another world, one that might offer salvation or doom. "Is this safe?" she questioned, breathless and fearful. "Safer than staying here," he replied, his voice steady, yet strained. As they pushed through the door, the shadows snarled behind them, enveloping the corridor in angry whispers that left her skin prickling. The moment they crossed the threshold, she felt a shift, a pulse of energy coursing through the air, strangely electric, almost alive. In a blink, they were thrust into a dimly lit room filled with forgotten relics of another age. A single, flickering light hung low from the ceiling, illuminating dust particles that danced like phantoms around them. But it wasn't just dust that caught her attention. On the far wall stood a weathered mirror, cracked and covered in grime, reflecting strange images that trapped her gaze. Faces twisted, shifting, morphing into those she recognized, the accusers, the fallen, all forming a tapestry of guilt, each one leering back with dreadful familiarity. "Don't look," he shouted, grasping her shoulders. "We have to focus. We can't let them pull us in." An icy chill swept through the room, crawling under her skin, but the reflections tugged at her, aching with the weight of her own decisions. Conflicted, she felt the pull of memories mixed with despair clouding her judgment. "Leave it." He thrust her away as shadows lunged from behind, the air thickening with danger. But it was too late. A voice echoed from the mirror, a regretful sigh that echoed deep within her soul. "You can't escape what's inside of you." The ground rumbled, and within seconds, the room tilted, pressing them against the wall. "Hang on," he yelled, as the foundations of the chamber began to collapse around them. But in that moment of chaos, she caught a glimpse of something in the mirror and understanding, a truth that sent a shiver through her heart. What was she really escaping? With one final scream, the room gave way, plunging them into darkness, thoughts swirling as the shadows laughed, and the last remnants of hope flickered. The ground fell beneath her feet, and she wondered, would they descend into chaos, or would they unearth the hidden spirit of their bond? As they tumbled into a void of uncertainty, she realized every step forward could unveil the truth she had always feared. She fell through the darkness, weightless, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Time stretched, twisting around her like a sickening, disorienting snare. When she thought the plummet would never end, they smashed into something hard, cold stone, littered with debris. Dazed, she pushed herself up, blinking rapidly against the dim light of a new space. This chamber, unlike the one before, felt alive with motion, a pulse thrumming through the air, like a heartbeat spiraling to a primal rhythm. The flickers of a fire nearby illuminated faces on the stone walls, murals depicting untold stories of torment and betrayal, just like her own. "Is this a prison?" she whispered, aghast, her voice echoing back at her. She could sense history clinging to the walls, the remnants of pain that had seeped into the very rock. "I don't know, but we can't stay here long," he replied, urgency lacing his tone as he scanned the surroundings. Before she could react, shadows loomed over them again, swirling and snapping like wolves on a hunt. The menacing energy from the mirror felt different here. It was raw, almost a living entity. As the figures began to converge, she felt the air thickening, suffocating. "They're coming," the man cried, gripping her arm with a fervor that made her skin ache. "Where do we go?" "Follow me. There." He pointed frantically toward a narrow opening in the wall, just large enough for them to squeeze through. Adrenaline surged as they darted toward it. Narrowly avoiding the grasp of the expecting shadows, they wriggled through the jagged entrance, stumbling into a dimly lit tunnel. Tremors rattled the earth above them, a low, ominous growl signaling the fury of the shadows echoing near the exit they had barely escaped. Fleeing this new realm, she could still hear the taunts trailing after them, echoes of fear and regret laced with her name, each syllable dripping with venom. "Keep moving," he urged, a fierce determination in his eyes, just barely catching her hand as she faltered, mesmerized by the darkness behind. Shadows tugged at her thoughts, wrapping around her soul with haunting whispers. Behind those shadows, she felt the weight of her past, her choices laid bare, every moment of betrayal resurfacing like jagged waves in a storm. But even as fear wrestled with her heart, the familiar echo of the man she ran with stirred something deeper inside her. "Don't think about it," he shouted, and that brought her back to the moment. They pushed forward, but facing endless corridors, each seemed to lead them deeper into the labyrinth of despair. "What if we don't find a way out?" she gasped, dread pooling in her stomach. "You have to believe." He turned fiercely, the emotion raw in his eyes, nearly pleading. "We have each other. That's what matters." Just then, an eerie silence fell around them, the kind thick with anticipation. They hesitated, breaths coming fast and shallow. The darkness shifted. It felt aware, alive, as if waiting for a cue. "Do you hear that?" she asked. A low hum had started to vibrate through the walls. It was almost musical, a strange melody woven with a sense of foreboding. Then, from the shadows emerged a figure, a silhouette against the pale glow of the tunnel's end. It was another woman, one with an eerie smile that mirrored the one from before. But this one looked different, her intentions unclear, her movements smooth like silk sliding over ice. "Looking for a way out?" she crooned, voice smooth and inviting. But behind her sugary tone lurked something sinister. The shadows dancing around the woman seemed to shift in response, glowing momentarily in what felt like promise or threat. "Who are you?" he demanded, stepping protectively in front of her. The woman's laugh danced on the edges of sanity. "Just a friend, a guide to what lies ahead. Or perhaps a glimpse of what you've left behind." The choice lay ahead: turn back to the treacherous remnants of memory, or plunge onward toward the unknown. Her pulse quickened with uncertainty as she glanced at him. "Which path will you choose?" The woman smiled, and for a heartbeat, hope and dread battled for dominance in her soul. An overwhelming desire to find the truth surged within her, but was she ready to confront it? The darkness loomed close, whispering promises, tormenting her senses, dragging her toward one final decision that could alter everything forever. And as the walls began to close in, she knew she had to choose what awaited them in the shadows. Was it salvation, or was it simply the beginning of an even darker journey? The woman's smile widened, a predatory gleam in her eyes. The shadows rippled around her, a cloak of darkness that seemed to breathe, pulling at the edges of reality. Whispered voices twisted around them, clamoring for attention, each murmur beckoning her to linger, to listen. Choose wisely, the woman said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that curled around the very core of her. Once you step into the truth, there's no turning back. A guttural growl burst through the tunnel behind them, snapping at their heels, and she felt the urgency gnaw at her gut. Worry etched his handsome features as he pulled her closer, the warmth of his body grounding her amidst the chaos. Stay focused, he urged, his voice barely a whisper over the growing din. We can't afford to be distracted. We need to escape. But behind that fierce determination was fear, a raw and crippling emotion that swirled in the depths of his eyes. She knew he wasn't just afraid of the shadows. He feared what lay ahead, just as much as she did. Where will this lead us? She stammered, her senses heightened, every nerve alert. She studied the woman before her, knowing that this could be a path toward understanding, yet the risks were just as high. Forward, the woman replied, stepping aside, an easy gesture that invited them to choose. You can uncover what haunts you or go back to the comfort of ignorance. After all, knowledge is a heavy burden. Knowledge, the very thing that had led her into this nightmare. But it was the raw truth she craved, the jagged pieces of her past that refused to settle or fade. Each memory a haunting echo she could no longer silence. He watched her, gauging her inner turmoil, and she could feel his presence urging her, steadying her resolve. We can't turn back, he whispered. It's now or never. The shadows danced eagerly, whispering promises of enlightenment, but they came with a cost. What truths would be revealed? What ghosts from her life were waiting for her in the depths? Time is short, the woman taunted, tilting her head, her smile tauntingly stretched across her lips. Choose your torment or embrace the truth. The tunnel felt like it was narrowing, pulsating around her, tightening its grip as the shadows clawed closer in protest. It was a matter of life and death, decision and consequence. She swallowed hard, grappling with the weight of the moment, the heart-wrenching pull of the past battling with the addictive allure of the unknown. Just do it, he urged, and the passion in his voice surged through her, igniting a fire she didn't know she had. With a trembling hand, she stepped forward, toward the beckoning shadows, toward the enigmatic woman, toward the truth she had long buried. We'll confront whatever it is. Together. Suddenly, the woman's smile flickered. The shadows surged at her, darkening her features, while the low hum of the tunnel transformed into sinister laughter. Strength in numbers. But often, the truth is not what you expect. Before she could register the gravity of her choice, the world around her began to shift. The walls began to weep dark shadows. Grotesque visages formed from pain and suffering swirling in a macabre dance. They twisted and recoiled before her eyes, dragging her toward visions she had never intended to revisit. Wait, what is happening? She screamed, panic rising like bile in her throat. No turning back now, the woman said, her figure merging with the shadows, eyes glinting with amusement. Embrace it. Those last words echoed, resonating deep within her. She felt pulled in every direction, the past clawing at her as the shadows threatened to consume them whole. Stick together, he shouted, reaching out to her just as the tunnel morphed underfoot, the ground cracking like ice. The echoes of her name sputtering from the shadows clouded her thoughts. What nightmarish truths awaited them? The very essence of their existence felt at stake, wrapped in the chaos of time, a bitter reckoning with everything she'd tried to forget. Then, as the floor gave way beneath them, she saw a glimmer, a fleeting glimpse of light at the end of the tunnel, radiating a warmth that felt almost sacred. But in that instant, she realized it was accompanied by bone-chilling darkness. Which path would hold the key to their escape? The truth or the shadows? As the earth crumbled around them, and the dark figures surged closer than ever. She braced herself and leapt forward toward the uncertain light. Whatever awaited them was a gamble she was willing to take. Would this journey finally end her struggle, or was the truth even darker than she feared? She had chosen to chase the light, but what if all it led to was a deeper darkness? The moment she lunged toward the light, everything shattered. The world twisted into a whirlpool of brightness and shadow, swirling violently as if caught in a storm. Her mind screamed for clarity, yet confusion wrapped around her like a shroud. Thick and suffocating, but a sensation like cotton candy clung to her skin, sticky and sweet, but there was a pungent undertone, something foul and wrong. She landed on her feet, adrenaline surging through her, but it felt like standing on a tightrope, balanced on the precipice of something monumental and terrifying. He was beside her, panting, eyes wide. What just happened? He gasped, sprinting to the edge of the light where reality sprouted its own shadows thick and heavy. They stood in a vast chamber, walls shrouded in flickering flames of cold blue and yellow, casting distorted shadows that danced mockingly around them. The ceiling loomed high, disappearing into ink blackness. The air was electric, charged with unspoken dread. "Is this it?" she managed to say, her voice echoing. It felt wrong, like speaking through water. "Are we safe?" "No," he whispered, eyes darting about. "Where?" "Somewhere else." As if summoned by his words, a chilling wind swept through the chamber, whistling a mournful tune that pierced her heart. The shadows thickened, coalescing into forms, figures of heartache, lost dreams, and despair, trapped in grotesque, swirling patterns. They reached out, their whispering voices begging for relief, twisting her gut with the weight of anguish. "Focus," he urged again, gripping her arm tightly. "We can't let them take us." "Where are we?" she demanded, her pulse racing. "What do they want?" One of the shadowy figures broke free from the mass. It was a face familiar yet unrecognizable, a gaze that once had comforted her. It hissed her name, the sound piercing through the air like a knife. Her heart dropped into her stomach. This was a part of her past, a ghost she feared, a memory she had never been able to shake. "Stay back," she shouted, shock transforming into fury. "I don't have to relive this." "But you will." The figure snarled, its voice a collage of familiar echoes warped by time. "You're meant to confront your truth." "Listen," he pleaded, stepping closer to her. "Don't let them in. They feed on your fear." But the shadows were relentless. They tightened, dark tendrils closing in as they pulled her forward, each pulse of dread threatening to rip her apart. Images flashed before her, laughter tainted by betrayal, love twisted by loss. The shadows relished the chaos of her memories, sucking the air from her lungs. "You chose to seek the truth." The faces screamed, their eyes hollow. "This is your reality now." As their wails intensified, the chamber began tilting, warping into a descent, dragging her deeper into the abyss. She felt him slip from her grasp, fear wrenching her heart as she lunged for him. "No, I want to let go," he yelled back, his strength straining against the shadows that threatened to engulf them. But she could see it, the truth awaited them deeper. The light shimmered, glinting off a stone pedestal rising from the predatory shadows. It pulsed like a heartbeat, radiating a warmth that called to her. Yet, her spirit warred against the yearning, each heartbeat a reminder of the pain waiting at its core. "Go to the light," he shouted, desperation coating his voice, but the shadows were stronger, wrapping their icy fingers around her neck. She clawed at them, fighting futility, the echo of her choices reverberating like thunder in the cavern. This was her final chance, bauble glimmering tantalizingly above the chaos, begging her to choose. Would she grasp the truth she sought, or let the shadows drag her into oblivion? Hope battled against despair, the conflicting emotions churning through her. With one last desperate shove against the shadows, she propelled herself towards the light, body igniting as she leapt toward a future she could barely comprehend. But just as she felt the warmth envelop her, everything vanished again, falling into sub-zero darkness. She gasped as she landed hard on the ground, her heart pounding wildly. Where had she ended up now? How much more of the truth lay ahead? Was it worth the risk, or was it simply another trap lurking in the shadows? The cold ground bit into her, jolting her back to reality. She blinked against the enveloping darkness, bewildered and gasping for breath. Could she truly have made it into another realm? Pushing herself up, she felt the residue of that last moment shimmering on her skin, a reminder of the warmth she nearly grasped. But here was only desolation. The air was thick with silence, laced with decay. She strained to listen, the absence of sound almost deafening. "Hello?" She called out cautiously, the word lingering and fading, swallowed by the void. Her voice was small, too small to fill the chasm around her. "Stay close," he muttered, appearing beside her, eyes scanning the surroundings. His presence anchored her, though confusion burrowed like a rat in her mind. "We need to find a way out of this place. Where is this? Where are we?" The walls felt like they were closing in, drowning her in claustrophobia that twisted her stomach. "I don't know," he replied, shaking his head. "But something's off. It's like this atmosphere. It feels wrong." As they stood together, shadows wrapped tightly around them, deeper than before, darker and more consuming. Shapes flickered in the corners, taunting, bound by threads of unreality. She lunged forward, instinctively reaching for the stone that had glinted before the embodiment of hope, but it wasn't there. Panic clawed at her. "We have to find that light. We can't let the darkness take us again." His expression faltered, fear creeping into his eyes. "That wasn't just a moment of light. It was something else, the truth you seek. I think we need to face the shadows first." "Face the shadows?" Each word dripped with disbelief. "What do you mean? You think we just let them have us? If we don't confront them, they'll haunt us forever." He was resolute, determination burning in his gaze. "We can't keep running. We have to understand why they're here." Tremors of doubt crept through her, but his courage bolstered her spirit. There was a choice in every heartbeat, after all. And deep down, she felt the undeniable truth that understanding her past, her choices, was the only way out. The shadows began to swirl, melding into a vortex of confusion and despair, the figures emerging like ghosts of unfulfilled promises. A familiar face materialized, eyes glistening like shattered glass. It was her mother, younger and filled with warmth, yet the smile was brittle, tainted with grief. "Why are you here?" she whispered hoarsely, heart pounding. "Because you left me behind," her mother's voice echoed, a ghostly whisper entwined with accusation. "You never faced your truth." "No, I tried. I'm here to do that now." The shadows writhed with frustration, their cold laughter chilling her to the bone. "Face what?" they taunted. "You exist in the past, forever haunted by your choices." "Don't listen," he shouted, pulling her back. She was frozen, trapped in her mother's gaze, caught between the warmth of nostalgia and the frost of despair. The past, so tempting, like an echo beckoning, demanded confrontation. "Your choices don't define you. They guide you," he urged. "You can choose differently now." Taking a shaky breath, she stepped forward, hand reaching towards the apparition of her mother. But just as fingers brushed against the silken image, it shattered like glass, leaving jagged shards of memories that cut deep. Pain lanced through her, dark and relentless. "Enough," she cried out, defiance rising like a flame. "I won't let you control me. I won't be a prisoner to fear." At those words, the shadows shivered. Her heart raced, daring to believe in a different fate, one where she could reclaim her narrative. But the shadows only roared louder. Sensation swept through her, a tidal wave of clarity and purpose igniting her spirit. This wasn't just about confronting her past. It was about tearing down the darkness, all the lies and pain embedded in those memories. "Together," he shouted, gripping her hand tightly. "We can fight." With that, they charged into the swirling mass, hearts pumping triumph and terror, drawing nearer to the heart of the shadows. But would it be enough to illuminate the truth that lay at the core of their anguish? Before they could fully embrace their power, an ear-splitting crack echoed through the chamber, fracturing the darkness. The walls pulsed, and then, a blinding light erupted once again, surging forth. "What is happening?" she gasped, terror flooding her veins as the shadows threatened to collapse around them. In response, the light expanded, swirling chaotically, demanding their presence. What awaited beyond the blinding glow? A glimmer of hope, or an even darker truth? They had to prepare for whatever lay ahead, for the fight was far from over. The blinding light enveloped them, and in that moment, everything changed. It was as if the very fabric of reality twisted, splitting their perceptions along a jagged line between past traumas and the visceral promise of reclamation. Light surged through them, igniting their souls and dousing the suffocating shadows clinging to their forms. "Hold on," he shouted, gripping her hand tighter, their fingers entwined as they hurtled into the unknown. The darkness writhed against the brightness, furious and chaotic, but that brightness seemed to pulse with every beat of their hearts. A beacon of hope in a sea of despair. As they broke through, the shadows shrieked, a cacophony of confusion and anger reverberating through the void. The air thickened, causing her to feel lightheaded. Was it fear or something else? But doubt had no place in this moment. She understood now. The ghosts of her past represented not only sorrow but also strength. Their shadows had no power over her anymore. They landed abruptly, the ground beneath them solid yet strangely warm, infused with an energy that vibrated against their skin. She blinked away the dazzle, and what met her gaze was a sight like none other, a vast expanse of ethereal light and shimmering pathways, stretching infinitely in myriad colors. Beneath it all, the ground throbbed with life, as if it breathed alongside them. "Where are we?" she breathed, all mingling with fear. "Somewhere new," he replied, wonder filling his voice. "A realm where you confront the true essence of who you are. The path to liberation begins here." She turned to him, emotions whirling within her like the colors painted across the sky. "Can we really leave the darkness behind?" "Yes," he answered firmly, but uncertainty crept into the depths of his eyes. "But only if we face it together." Suddenly, the shadows they thought they'd escaped started to materialize once more, not as menacing figures, but as flickering forms, murmurs of their pasts, entwined in waves of sorrowful beauty. The faces were familiar yet distorted, memories flashing like sheets in a storm, blurring the line between pain and growth. She saw her mother, an embodiment of love and loss, battling with her own guilt. "I see you," her mother whispered, sorrow escaping like a free bird. "You cannot erase your past, but you can own it." The shadows shifted subtly, becoming less oppressive, morphing into echoes of strength. "We are lessons," they murmured as one, weaving their words into the fabric of reality. "Every scar, every choice embrace us, and we will release you." With each heartbeat, with his hand still tightly clasped in hers, she inched forward toward the shadows, now transformed into glistening wisps of light. "I acknowledge you," she spoke with newfound conviction. "You are part of me, but you don't define my course." "Together," he echoed, stepping closer, bravery infusing his voice, and the shadows pulsed in agreement, rippling like waves across the ocean. This was the moment of reckoning. They would no longer be shackled by fear nor haunted by sorrow. Instead, they would sculpt their narrative, light woven through darkness, crafting a tapestry of resilience and undeniable power. An overwhelming wave of energy radiated from her, engulfing the shadows in a prism of light. Each flash unveiled fragments of joy intertwined with pain, every moment transformed into a brushstroke of experience. With every memory embraced, the darkness dissipated, the shadows releasing their grip. "I'm free," she gasped, exhilaration radiating through her being. "We're free," he exclaimed, a wide grin spreading across his face as the last remnants of despair broke apart in a spectacular explosion of colors, scattering into the ether. That moment stretched on, hanging like magic in the air, and she felt emboldened to fully step into who she was, every part shining and resilient. As she looked around, the realm shimmered, an expanse full of possibilities set before them. "What is our next step?" she asked, breathless. "Wherever you wish to go," he replied, a confident spark in his eyes. "The choices lay ahead, and we will walk this path together." Together. The word wrapped around her heart like a warm embrace, igniting a flicker of determination. The shadows had been reminders of the past, yes, but they had also crafted the person she was becoming. With a firm grasp on his hand, she stepped forward, and they stepped into a radiant dawn. Now, a fresh journey awaited them, free to explore paths carved from the light and wisdom of their experiences. This was their new beginning, and the horizon was painted in colors more vivid than she had ever imagined possible. Don't let this magical moment fade. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss any future adventures. Smash the like button if you believe in the power of hope and resilience. And let us feed the algorithm. Your thoughts matter. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about their journey. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel inspired today. This is your moment to show the love and support for the stories we're crafting together.